Hey, Rogue Reader here, back for another first reading review. I've been behind on some of the newer Star Wars releases, and I've slowly been making my way on catching up on those. Um, Today, I wanted to do a first reading review impressions. Again, these aren't really scripted, these are just my first impressions after I've read them. Today, it's going to be Crimson Climb by E.K. Johnson or Johnston. I always feel bad. I feel like I don't know how to pronounce these authors' names. But I'm going to give the basic setup of this book. I won't be going into heavy spoilers or any plot details like that. It's just kind of the general setup and idea of what the novel is. There's only going to be one thing I'm going to mention later, one thing that's not in the book. That'll be the furthest I'll go, I guess, spoiler wise, but I think it's important to discuss. But the setup of this book is a story, the story of what happened to Qi'ra from Solo after Han essentially left Corellia and she was left behind. This is what happened to her after that and how she got involved in Crimson Dawn and kind of the beginning of her rise through that crime organization. That's the setup of this book. To give my thoughts just maybe on Solo in general and Qi'ra, I really enjoy Solo. I like that movie quite a bit. It's definitely vanilla, as some people would call it. It doesn't do anything new or daring. It tells the story that we technically already know, but I think it does it well. I think it's a lot of fun. And I mean, I run a Star Wars book channel. I like anything you see that fills in gaps, even if you didn't necessarily need to know them. So I liked Solo quite a bit. I thought Qi'ra was an interesting character in that movie as well. I did enjoy her. And I also especially enjoyed her return in the comics. So when they did the War of the Bounty Hunters, Crimson Reign, that whole arc where she just comes back in between episodes 5 and 6, and she just becomes this huge threat to the Empire and brings the crime organization back, and she's heading it. That's a really fun comic arc. I highly recommend it. And it's great to see her character brought back from a film in kind of a major way that way. So I enjoy all of that, and I was definitely very excited when I saw this was coming out. I was very excited to check this book out and just get more of Qi'ra, because I like her character a lot, and I think it's just Crimson Dawn and the whole thing is just fascinating to learn more about. So I was definitely very excited for this one. And so in terms of the plot, I think this is a really intriguing read. I like this one quite a bit. It's very fascinating to see what happens. I mean, maybe not fascinating is the right word to use. I enjoyed seeing what Qi'ra had to face immediately following Han essentially not leaving her on purpose, but he got away and she didn't. She was left behind. And you kind of see the aftermath of that and what she has to deal with, because she did attempt to escape and she gets caught again, and has to be punished by this, Lady Proxima, this big worm that is cruel but also trying to be manipulative and pretending to be kind. And it's really interesting, and it didn't even occur to me, I don't know why it didn't, but it didn't occur to me that she probably faced some harsh things after she was left behind, because she was in a street gang and they weren't going to take too kindly to what she tried to do, and she was caught. And it never occurred to me wondering what she faced in the aftermath of that. And you see it all here. And it's as dire as it sounds, the things that she has to go through. If you've read any of the Ender's Game books, Orson Scott Card, he can write children. He writes children in those books as being very mean. And this kind of gives those vibes, the street gangs. If you've read any of the Bean books and what he had to deal with growing up, this gives similar vibes of what she has to deal with in this street gang. All of that was very interesting. I enjoyed seeing that aspect very much. And then once she gets into Crimson Dawn, there is a kind of a stage where she's not in it right away, and you kind of see her doing low operations and how she rises up in it. There was definitely a part, I would say, when she first gets into it that I was kind of feeling like maybe is this dragging a little too long? I wasn't finding it quite as interesting, because she's not able to do the interesting things in a story you would expect right away. But I mean, that makes sense. She's not just going to start off at the top of the criminal organization. She has to build her way up. But it quickly builds up and it gets right back into it. And then you see what she has to deal with now that she's in a whole new criminal element and how that works. And again, that's all very fascinating. I enjoyed all of that very much. Now, this is where I have to say the one thing that is not going to be in this book. So if I don't know if you consider that a spoiler or not, but I'm just going to say it right here. If you were going into this expecting Qi'ra to see her interactions with Darth Maul, the head of Crimson Dawn, that doesn't happen in this book. It doesn't happen yet. They're definitely building up to it, and I can tell that she intends to write more of these. You can tell that this was not meant to be a single book, that there's going to be sequels. And so I'm all for that. But yeah, if you were expecting this to have a Darth Maul element into it, he's kind of like, reference. You know what's going on behind the scenes in some parts, but he's not in it directly, and she doesn't have direct interactions with him. So just be aware of that if you're going into this book expecting that. I'm definitely expecting to see that in the sequels, which I'm sure are going to happen, because definitely you can tell she's not done with the story by the time you get to the end of this one. When it comes to my thoughts on the characters, Qi'ra herself, I think she's written very well here. I enjoy getting into her mind. I enjoy seeing her on her journey, what she has to, how she mentally handles things being in a street gang, how she has to deal with the fallout of being caught, how when she gets into Crimson Dawn, she is in a whole new element that she's not used to, but she learns to quickly adapt. And as she starts to realize that she doesn't have the skills for these, but she has a knack for it, and she starts learning, and you see in her mind now she starts to think, maybe this is a life that I can make something of myself with. Maybe this isn't a foreign or bad thing. Maybe this is something I kind of want. It's very interesting to see her thought process as she goes through all of this. It's also interesting to see her thoughts on Han as well. So throughout the book, she kind of carries the memory of Han with her. She's never expecting to see him again, but that memory of, you can tell she really cared for him, and his loss was definitely felt by her. But more, it seems like she respects his character, and she knows that this is a guy who at his heart, at his core, is a good guy. And maybe she doesn't believe that she is that at her own core, but she kind of holds on to that idea as something to almost look up to in a kind of a not real way. Like, it brings her pleasure to think that there's someone that's good like that. But then she doesn't necessarily apply it to herself. It's if it's something that will never be in her reach, and she knows that. So seeing her thoughts and how she carries that through, and I think it makes it much more interesting. I'm curious when I eventually rewatch Solo, if I'm going to read more into her interactions with him in that movie after seeing him again and not necessarily expecting to. So that was all very interesting. I like that very much. The villain, we do get to see Dryden Voss from the film Solo, kind of the head of this part of Crimson Dawn. And he's written so well. He's spot on. She nails his character. I could see the actor in my head just doing this perfectly. He's this total just, he's this pure evil guy who doesn't care for anyone, but he has this weird fascination with Qi'ra, not as a person necessarily, almost like a pet. He wouldn't care he's invested in her, but he also wouldn't care if something were to happen to her. And it's written very well. And anytime you feel on edge any scene that he's in, that she writes with him in it, because you know that this guy could just snap because, people don't really mean anything to him. So anytime there was a scene with him, it was always intense and interesting. And her interactions with him as well, it's all just a good relationship. Not a good relationship, but it's a well-written relationship that's very interesting to read and see happen. My only real criticism of this novel is that there's a lot of other characters too in the criminal organization, members of the street gang, members in Crimson Dawn itself, and honestly, kind of towards the later half of the middle, I had trouble following everyone that was there. It's not like there's an excessive amount, but I don't think enough of the characters are given time for them to really sink in. So I had trouble remembering who was who and who did what. Ultimately, it doesn't matter too much at the end of the day, but it definitely, I would say that's the biggest negative of this book, is all the characters around Qi'ra and Dryden Voss. They kind of all blur. We don't get enough time with them to really let them stick in our minds on who they are and what they're doing. Overall, though, I really enjoyed this novel. I enjoyed the darker undertones. I enjoyed getting to see Qi'ra and who she is and how she thinks. And I definitely recommend this one. This was a really good Star Wars novel. Probably one of the more enjoyable ones I've read recently when it comes to Disney canon novels. So I definitely recommend it. If if you enjoyed Solo, if you enjoy anything about Qi'ra and Crimson Dawn, you won't be let down by this. And if it sounds intriguing to get into the mind of someone who works their way up a criminal organization and it's this more darker undertone kind of Star Wars novel, you'll enjoy this as well. So definitely I recommend this one. That's going to be it for now. Let me know if you've read this, if you've enjoyed Crimson Climb. Do you like Qi'ra in general? Did you enjoy the comic run she was in? I thought those were amazing. I'm playing through Star Wars Outlaws right now too for the first time. I haven't gotten too far yet, but I know Crimson Dawn's part of that too. So I'm curious to see where that all goes. But that'll be it for today. So have a great day, and may the Force be with you.